I just find too many marketers, they spend more time in the social media scheduling tool than they do in the social networks themselves. And just going to your notifications isn't enough. It's really being in the feed on a daily basis.
You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and in this episode, I have the pleasure of welcoming back Neal Schaffer. Now, Neal is a good friend of mine. He's a fractional CMO, and he helps entrepreneurs and business owners to grow their business through leveraging best practices and trends in digital content, influencer, and social media marketing. And he launched his sixth book, Digital Threads, on the 1st of October 2024. It's a compilation of big brand strategies for small businesses and entrepreneurs, helping to build and grow their businesses. Now, he talks through the SES framework in our conversation, which is search, email, and social. And Neal gives some really insightful thoughts on the importance of each of them and how they should fit in a modern digital-first strategy. He also breaks down the 6 containers you should focus on in digital marketing and so much more. It's a great conversation. We had so much to get through, so buckle up and let's dive in. Neal, welcome back to the Content 10x podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Amy. It's really an honor to be on a second time.
A second time, I know. And the last time we were talking on the podcast, we were talking all about the age of influence, and it was around about the time that your book came out. And now you have another book, which is super exciting, Digital Thread. So I'm so excited to talk to you about that. I've been very, very privileged to be able to read the book before it hit the bookshelves and Amazon and all of that. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to sharing more on that. So really important question. Why a new book and why now?
Yeah. So, as someone who is an author, speaker, consultant, and Amy, I think you're also agency owner, which I'm not. But, a book at the end of the day is the best sort of PR that you can do. It keeps your name out there. It's a big business card. And for me, I really developed my career. It began with a book back in 2009 on LinkedIn, which propelled me to speaking and consulting. So, this is now it's my 6th book. I actually published another book on LinkedIn this week, but we'll talk about that later. I didn't really publicize that. But, for me, it was really creating just a new platform that, the age of influence began this story where companies were reaching out to me just wanting one thing without really thinking through what other things they might do that might be more effective. So I thought it was a really good time over the past few years of being a fractional CMO to bring together this experience to be able to serve more people. I think it also helps me really organize my own thoughts, and it gives me more of a practical framework. And I think more than anything, Amy, as you know, we talk about like video being the best source of content repurposing. A book is a great way to aggregate a lot of content that you have, and then from the book, repurpose again. So, I have a lot of people reach out to me, Amy, like, should I write a book? And, a book is a SKU. It gives you a product to sell. It gives you a product to discount. It gives you a product on Amazon to run ads against. So it's just a different paradigm that I really enjoy, and it is another driver of business for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely makes sense. And like you said, it isn't just the book, is it? It's so many other things that encompass having a book. So Digital Threads, I love the whole concept of it, about how need to kind of weave together all the different aspects and how they fit in with each other and the key components. Why that particular topic? Because you mentioned, I know there's been a lot, you've written a book on LinkedIn, you've written many books, influence book, Digital Threads. So what made you think, right, this is the next topic to cover?
Yeah, I always write books based on my experience, and my experience is literally based on customer demand. So when the Age of Influence came out, I really did believe, and I still believe, that influencer marketing is one of the most powerful yet least understood forms of marketing or channels. So with Digital Threads, it was really a reset, because I think that COVID really accelerated everything digital. And there are still companies that operate their marketing as if it was still 2010. So for me, it was really, hey, looking at what savvy companies are doing, there's a playbook, and there's a playbook that if you follow the advice, you can basically implement, sort of big brand strategies at a small business budget. And I really do believe that. So I thought that would be a great way to, like I said, I think it's missing in the market. Digital marketing is something we've been talking about for 2 decades, and then social media came along, and that was really cool. And people stopped talking about digital marketing. And I think, things like SEO and email marketing have gotten sort of passe, but I wanted to breathe new life into them and make people understand their importance when put together with social media. So a lot of talk about digital, but social is usually an afterthought where I think it is a must-have. And no one was really putting all this together into something, consumable and playbook-like. So I thought that there was an opportunity to really contribute. As an author and as a speaker consultant, you want to contribute new ideas, right? And bring our understanding forward. And I thought it would be a great opportunity. So, and I still do. I still think that a lot of companies really focus on one side of marketing and they don't see the whole picture. And I wanted to really provide that whole picture through the book. And I was looking for an analogy. What am I going to call this book, right? Like digital marketing or and it was, I work with a developmental editor in Berlin, and it was actually spending the day walking around the old Berlin Wall area where it still existed, where it just hit me, right? It just that inspiration where you never know what's going to hit you. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that really brought together. And it's funny because I wrote the book, and it's like, I didn't really define what digital threads is. I better talk about it in the conclusion. So, but hopefully, when people read it and you yourself as well, I mean, you understand that it's not one thing, it's a culmination of things. And the more of these things that you do in the right order, the more effective your marketing will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about how, you saw that opportunity to bring everything together because, I don't in any way profess to know everything about digital marketing at all. But, as someone like quite familiar with the world and everything, I was just really appreciative of you were just kind of like reminding me of really key things and bringing me back to just focus on what are the reasons that we do things and not just a holistic view of where it actually does all fit in. And I remember having read the book, doing a bit of a meeting with my team where I was just saying to them how everything fits together, and let's just remember this in the part that we play in our client's journey and what we do for ourselves. So it really does help you see how everything fits together. And I guess like a key message in the book is the SES, the SES framework: search, email, social media marketing. You really shine a light on that and the role that they play and how they interact with each other. And I wondered if it'd be okay for us to kind of break that down in terms of maybe starting at the start. So the concept of the framework, and then maybe if we start with search, just in terms of what the key things are that are really important within that area.
Yeah, so I always look for really, really dumbed down, easy to understand frameworks, right? And I begin the book talking about like the 6 channels, the 6 containers of digital marketing. And that is basically you have an app or a website. There's and all these have like organic and paid. So you have SEO, organic and obviously pay per click. You have email marketing. You have content marketing, which sort of serves all the other containers. You have social media marketing, then you have influencer marketing. And I wanted to dumb that down even more to its core essence. And that's when I came up with what I call the SES framework, because I believe, first of all, everything that you do in digital, should fit in one of those containers. So then I created a concept or a framework called the funnel of digital relationships. And I still lean heavily into the funnel analogy because I think it is a very, very convenient way to understand that, hey, people start out not knowing anything about your business. And at the end, hopefully they have interest in you, they convert, and they become your advocate. So in that scenario, I realized that I could further dumb down those 6 containers into 3. So you begin at the top of the funnel. You need to be discovered. How do you become discovered today? You don't get discovered through email, although it's possible, but it's primarily either through search or increasingly social media, right? So we begin to see that, okay, we need to have search. We need to become discovered because search engines are still an important place, but social media is becoming a more important place where people get discovered. Then when we bring it one step further, how do we get people to get to know more about us? That's where we get to email. And that's where you get people to your website, you get people to your social media profile, but you're still relying on algorithms. And you need to, solidify those relationships and confirm their interest. And obviously that's done through email. That's really where it shines. And then as we get further down, well, how do we, further educate, potential customers in order to get them to become customers? Well, that's where you obviously have email, but you also have social media as well, continuing to feed them information at every stage of the customer journey. And then when you get to advocacy, it really does rely on social media. So you begin to see that search still has a play, and we can talk about generative AI, and that's probably a topic for an entirely different episode. But search, does has its role. Social, email obviously has a role, and then social really fits at every stage of the funnel. So social is one of those things where, Neal, what's the ROI of social media? But you can't ignore the fact that this is the place where people spend their most time online. How you generate ROI from that is another topic, and I talk about that in the book. But really, when you dumb it down, it comes to search, email, social. And I do believe, in the way I structured the entire book, is it's in different parts, and every part begins with search, email, social. And it's this process, a growing process that you take one step before you take the next step, and then everything becomes more effective over time. So when you were asking about the search aspect, I begin the search aspect with, if you want to become discoverable in search engines, you need content, right? So I came up with this content of library of content. And even with generative AI search, and we have people like Neil Patel saying, SEO is like search everywhere, right? Search everywhere optimization. And regardless, you still need to have core content. And I will say, Amy, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here and all of our listeners, that core content is also your library of content, not just for search engines, but also for content repurposing. And that's why, even if, I'm one of the sites, a lot of individual bloggers like myself got hit by Google's recent updates over the last 12 months, I have not stopped blogging. It's, for me, it's also the content repurposing, also R&D. What are other people talking about online? What are other people searching? What do I need to serve? So in many ways, yes, the library of content is to become discoverable. Should you get website traffic? To me, that is icing on the cake. You will get some website traffic. How much, I do not know. But at least putting that IP into content in a blog format that is then discoverable, that becomes the core of your content repurposing, is something that, surprisingly enough, a lot of companies don't really have. And especially, more B2B companies these days have it. When you get into B2C, which can equally be doing the same thing, you see less and less. So that's really the foundation. And it's something I've spent a lot of time on. And everything I talk about in the book like this are things that I have done with clients or with my own brand over the last few years, and really, getting more data to prove what I'm talking about. But that's really the starting point of the recommendations of the book for search. So when we go from there, we have this library of content. What do you do with it? I have two more chapters on search. One really deals with backlinking, and I think in the SEO world, it comes down to basics. I see a lot of advice on what do we do with generative AI search, and the advice that they're giving is sort of the same basic SEO advice that we've been talking about for a decade, right? And if you think about it, and I like to say this in the book, and whenever I speak with clients and on stage, if you were a search engine, how would you serve up content, right? And therefore, obviously, the content itself obviously speaks for itself, but do you have other websites mentioning you? Do you have other websites linking to you? And that's where I talk about backlinking. And backlinking really, this is not some black hat thing. To me, it's really influencer marketing for SEO. It's developing relationships, and it's really giving the content that you already have more visibility, not just on the internet wherever you appear, but also with search engines. And then finally, I end. And every one of the SES has 3 different components to it. I end with, well, now you have a library of content. Now you have backlinks and relationships with other websites. You're getting your content out there across the web, and search engines are recognizing that. What to next? That's where I talk about content repurposing. And that's where, and this is before people were talking like search everywhere optimization, but the fact of the matter is, you have this gold mine of content that you can really use across all of your platforms now. And that blog content, like content marketing in general, serves all those other containers. So that's where I go. And, with SEO, you can really get lost in the weeds. I take a very holistic approach. There's obviously a technical SEO aspect, but at the end of the day, SEO is about the user experience. Part of that's content. part of that's performance, what have you. But Google is really, I think we all know they're really leaning into that. How useful, how helpful is your content? How much personal experience, how much expertise are you showing? So that's really my focus on the SEO, is really on the content.
And I love the way that you make the clear point that when we talk about a search engine, we're not just talking about Google and Bing and those search engines, but these days people use TikTok as a search engine, people use Instagram as a search engine, of course YouTube and Amazon as well. People use these tools as a search engine. So it's not just the search engines we think of, but the other ways people go to search. And I'm sure we're going to kind of move on to, well, how do you get from someone finding you to the email list side and the nurture and all of that?
And Amy, on that note, I just want to point out that, Google Analytics does not pull in the views you get on TikTok on your content, on YouTube Shorts, on LinkedIn. And by the way, Amy, I recently wrote, well, this week published a new book on LinkedIn, and I believe the algorithm there has changed really most aggressively, or it is the biggest change in the algorithm, I think, over the past few months than I've seen over years. And link content is just dead. I mean, yes, sometimes you'll get some visibility, but obviously, and I talk about this in the book as well, with link content being dead, if you want to be found everywhere and you want that library of content to shine on social media where people are searching and to get visibility, you have to repurpose. And that's where, to me, it all fits together.
Hey, just a little break from this week's episode to let you know about becoming a Content 10x Insider. If you want more content repurposing tips and advice, then why not join hundreds of business owners, marketers, and content creators who get them delivered straight to their inbox once a week by subscribing to the Content 10x newsletter. As well as tips and advice, you get industry updates, inspiring stories, exclusive content, offers, and more. You can subscribe at content10x.com/newsletter, and there's a link in the show notes too. Okay, back to this week's episode. And what do you think, for example, creating content for search? So not just the blog posts and things like that, but you do want to be found by people searching for your content on the social platform. So you want to be found on TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever. What kind of mistakes do you see people make that you are putting all this content out there, but people are not going to find you through the normal search mechanisms on some of these social platforms?
Yeah, you have to align yourself with the platform. And I think a lot of marketers, I go back to the days, I don't know if you remember, Amy, ping.fm. And it was this brilliant little tool when social media was scattered and you had like StumbleUpon and all these other sites, MySpace, what have you. It was a site where it would just take your link and publish it simultaneously on like 30 different platforms.
Oh, wow.
Almost like in the old days of LinkedIn groups, you could publish something on 20 different groups and you'd get fair amount of traffic. Obviously, those days are gone. But it's really that each one of these networks is really different. And if you were to publish the same short form video on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, you begin to realize the differences in not just the algorithms, but the audience. So in the book, I talk about this concept of reconnaissance. It's something that YouTube expert Daryl Eves, YouTube Formula, great book, but he talks about this in detail, really creating a dummy account to better understand your target audience and what content they are consuming. I just find too many marketers don't spend enough time. They spend more time in the social media scheduling tool than they do in the social networks themselves. And just going to your notifications isn't enough. It's really being in the feed on a daily basis, spending time. I'm about to write a new blog post, Amy, on, it's time to ditch the social media scheduling tool because it has its convenience, but it also takes you away from understanding the algorithm and the content that is very popular right now. So with that in mind, it's about you. There are some times where you can repurpose that content and maybe do it the same way on different networks, but in general, it's going to require a one-to-one approach of how do you repurpose that? For LinkedIn in specific, I know we have a big B2B audience. Is it a carousel post? Well, I don't see any carousel posts in my feed anymore. Before 2 years ago, we saw polls. I rarely see polls anymore, right? You're seeing, selfies or, pictures of groups of people with really long explanations, and the links are sort of thrown in the comments. So, understanding that it's going to take a different way to repurpose on each one of these platforms if you really want to get the most juice out of your content. So it almost requires a new social media strategy, these days, just because that link-based content just is not going to, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, it's not a social media strategy, is it? It's a LinkedIn strategy, a TikTok strategy, an Instagram strategy. It's having a strategy for each platform. And as you said, repurposing can help, but you have to be platform specific and not think that it's going to work across platform.
And Amy, you also have to lean in. You don't need to be everywhere. It's the reason why I've really slowed down on X to the point I'm ready to disconnect. And when I put out some content, LinkedIn's the only place where I get engagement. And it really has become this most viral platform. So it's okay not to repurpose. You don't need to check all the boxes, but really lean in and focus on the ones where you see a lot of views or a lot of engagement. Let that be the cue that you're doing something right there, and really lean into those and focus more and get more juice out of them.
I agree with you. I actually published a podcast episode. It feels like recently, but it was probably a year or so ago. But it was called something like, the myth that content repurposing is about being everywhere, because I think that phrase gives content repurposing a bit of a bad reputation because people think that that is the premise of it, but it's not. It's being the places that are important to you in the right places. It may just be that your entire repurposing plan is focusing on long form content from one container to short form content in one specific container, and it's not trying to be everywhere. Interestingly, though, when I had Christopher Penn on the Content 10x podcast, and we were talking about AI, which you've already mentioned, and using AI in search and people turning to the generative AI tools instead of going to Google and things like that. And his view was quite different in terms of, he was looking at it purely from the algorithm, like in the Gen AI, so the large language models view of things, and saying, absolutely be everywhere, like, be on TikTok, be here, but it doesn't matter if people are engaging or anything, because what you're doing is feeding this machine, and the machine is crawling around and seeing more instances of you absolutely everywhere, and then it's going to refer to you more when people say who is an expert on this or that. So I found that quite an interesting view, because to please the large language models was to do that, but then we're saying that to please the algorithms on the platforms, that wouldn't work unless it was platform specific, and then to please your audience at the end of the day, the humans as well, it has to be quality. So it gets quite complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think, and Chris Penn is one of the most absolute, wizards of AI. Someone I think that everyone, he has a wonderful newsletter that you should all subscribe to
Yeah, he
too.
does.
And I wouldn't say I don't disagree, but I think that marketers and businesses, we are under budget constraints and timing constraints and showing results. And I haven't seen any data yet, right? Because this is so new. And that's why it's really tricky when we talk about new technology is, well, if I do that, then is it really going to help? And we know with the recent updates, and if if you go to Gen AI search engines, you realize, hey, well, why aren't they mentioning my company, or why are my competitors showing up? So we don't know the way that they work, and definitely large language models are able to accept a lot of data. So I have seen that same suggestion. I would not. I think at the end of the day, the content still represents you, and it still requires resource and effort, and sometimes money. So I'm not saying he's recommending a spray and pray approach, but I would still be a little bit more diligent. But who knows? We don't know what history will tell us a year from now. We'll have more visibility. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my take, at least for now.
Yeah. So then we've been lucky with we've been strategic, and quality content has prevailed, and we're being found, and people are getting us in search, and they are coming to our website. So, the next thing, email, we want to get people, so it's email so that we can keep in touch with them and nurture them and have that direct contact with them. What's the advice and like the process, I suppose, of how do we achieve that? How do we get that that email and then embark upon that journey of a different kind of relationship with the people that want to stay in touch with us?
Yeah, email is such an afterthought for most companies, and that's why I gave it equal weight. The SCS, all these components get equal weight. So, email begins, and I think this is something also that a lot of companies miss out on, is if you're just contacting those that are already on your list, you miss out on contacting prospects, right? It is a limited world that you have. So I really begin with growing your list through lead magnets. And lead magnet, sign up for a 10% off coupon. That is a lead magnet. Give us a sign up for a 1 week free trial. That is a lead magnet. So it's really this concept of having lead magnets and investing in maybe multiple lead magnets so that you have, you get people coming to your website from search engines, from word of mouth, from social media, and 99.9% will not convert. Well, how do we nurture that relationship? The only way to do that is through email, and the only way is to give a gift, right? Give them something of value so that they will want to keep in touch. And maybe they'll immediately unsubscribe, but most will hang on until they have a reason to unsubscribe or they make the purchase. So that's really where I start. And then once you have a list, the next question, and I really begin as if this is a new company that knew nothing about digital marketing, is what I call communication pathways. So how now do we stay in touch with people that have expressed interest with us on our list? And there's a few different strategies there. I think, a sequence-based, I think that welcome email and what is the stage that you set for your first welcome sequence becomes really important. There's a lot of companies that don't even have a welcome sequence, or they haven't really thought much about their welcome email. So that's where I really wanted to talk about the importance of that. And how are you going to keep in touch with them? Every company loves to blast their email list with a promo, but before you do that, there's a lot of other types of value that you can be offering them. And that was really the advice that I wanted to offer there. A periodic newsletter is one type of value that some might find interesting. Do you do it on a monthly basis, a weekly basis? So I talk about that, but you need to stay in touch. And I know, Amy, we're both friends with Jay Baer. And the first time I met Jay Baer was at a conference called Blog World in Las Vegas. I want to say back in 2009. And
Wow.
I remember bumping into him at this after night, rooftop party, and we both had drinks in hand. And I'm like, Jay, what's your take on email? How often should I be emailing my list? He's like, you have to email them at least weekly. And I think you'd agree. He'd probably say the same thing. There's some who say daily, but I do think you need to have a cadence. But in order to have a cadence, you need to have something to say. Otherwise, they lose interest. So really, that chapter is to give you ideas. And then the final chapter is marketing automation. And this is something a decade ago, you need to have a pretty sophisticated tool to do. But even, the MailChimps of the world now have, or ConvertKit like I use, now has somewhat of marketing automation features that you can use. And that allows you to really automate things. They visited a certain page, or they downloaded a certain asset or what have you, to trigger what does the customer journey look like, and how can you be keeping in touch through these marketing automations and through timely and relevant messages all along the way, is an extremely powerful thing that I think a lot of really savvy B2B companies understand, but most small businesses don't. A lot of B2C e-commerce companies understand, because you have like abandoned cart, emails, or I mentioned a few data points there, the case study of like the price drop trigger that Klaviyo offers like out of the box for Shopify clients. So there's a lot to work through there, but it's really thinking about not just having one marketing automation, but really having a series of marketing automations to really make sure that you are side by side with your prospect as they go through this customer journey, offering them advice at every step.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I guess from, often in the B2B world, and like if you're going to send something like a weekly email, like we send a weekly email, and I always feel that it just has to be valuable and interesting. It has to have some reason to think that was interesting, tips, advice, like mentions of the recent content, because it's not like everybody's just hanging on my, everything that we release, just like waiting for it to be released. But I feel like that again, I'm often going to be talking about this, but you've already mentioned this. That's where repurposing can help, isn't it? Because when you fill in the content container and this for search and to get found and people find you, and then you have some kind of cadence that you want to commit to with serving up value to your email subscribers, so that it's worth staying in touch with you. You can be leveraging all the thought that went into that great content that helped through search to be great, providing great valuable within the email list as well, can't you? So they can overlap in different formats, but the thought process is often the hardest part, isn't it, actually? So
Yeah, when you have the content, it's not just content repurposing. And I know, Amy, you've talked a lot about this on your podcast, but it's also generative AI can work hand in hand if you do it right. But you need to have the content, right? And that's where generative AI shines. You have a 1,000 word blog post that you want to summarize in 200 words for a newsletter, you keeping the same tone, keeping the same voice with a custom GPT. That is, I don't know what life in marketing would be like without AI already. And ChatGPT hasn't even been around for 2 years. So obviously that makes it easier for us to stay in touch, so long as we're adding that human element in the final output. And that's the key.
yeah, yeah. It's funny you should say that, because I had good buddy of mine, Ian Anderson Gray, on the podcast, and he
Great
said
guy.
that he's really into Gen AI at the moment. He's running an event about Gen AI in the next month. He said that has a purely automated newsletter that takes I think a blog post or his podcast episode, and he's entrusting it to create the email and automatically sent out, which I felt was quite brave, because I must admit I don't think I'd ever hit publish or send or anything until I'd checked. But it seems to be working for him. So and he is a bit of a whiz, so he's probably put the most insane prompt to get it as good as possible, I'm sure. I'm sure it isn't turn to newsletter, send to my list. I'm sure there's like a lot of information to help the Gen AI do a good newsletter.
Yeah, and I think, and I talk about it in the book as well. I have this dedicated chapter. I really, take this holistic perspective of where you might want to think about using Gen AI in your content creation workflow. But, at the end of the day, there are tools out there that will automate the newsletter, that'll automate this or that. But at the end of the day, you need to make the final call. Does this make sense for my brand? Does this make sense for my target audience? If it is a highly technical thing, then whether it's AI or human, it may not make that much of a difference. For instance, like technical documentation, right? So, but these are things that we all need to consider. We all need to have our own like generative AI filter, as businesses, to understand how much we want to use. And maybe people that subscribe to Ian Anderson Gray because all he talks about is generative AI, they just assume it's AI generated. But if it gets them the information they want, then they're cool with that. So, but that's maybe his audience. That may not be our audience. And this is, the more AI we have, the more human and holistic and critical thinking skills we need to employ to best understand when, where, and how to use it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's different. He's trying to educate on AI. So, it's an AI interested audience following quirks of AI, whereas it'd be quite unusual for, for me to do something like that. So it makes sense. I'm conscious that we are running out of time. The last container, well, we've talked about it because of its role in search as well. But, social media, and you've mentioned earlier about the collaborative, like influencer side of social media as well. But that's clearly, they're all equal weight, you said. So social media, it's super important, isn't it? And has a huge role to play in the digital threads.
It's the one, part of the framework where companies usually overinvest time and resources, which is why the second S of SES is social. Obviously, it's important, right? But I think that the way that companies think about social is either we're going to create a lot of content or we're going to do a lot of ad spend. And obviously, paid social can be effective, but paid social is only effective when you already, if it's a purely cold audience, it's going to be expensive. Having a warm audience is going to make it more effective. And having a warm audience means building up an organic following, right? And now you've had a gentleman, and I'm forgetting his name, who talked about this concept of, and Amanda Natavidad, and I talked about her in the book, of zero-click content. And he had another word for it. I actually reached out to him, and I wanted to get his quote for the book, but I unfortunately never heard back from him. But it was a brilliant episode, which is like, hey, if you write a post on a social network and you take out the link, will the post still have value? Was really
Yeah,
what he was
John
talking about.
Benini. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant episode. Everyone should listen to it if they haven't. So I came up with my own sort of concept called platform authentic content, which is making content for that specific platform. When we sort of talked about this in content repurposing, that we want to make sure that we're aligned with each platform. Now, who is best at creating platform authentic content? It's content creators, because they do it for a living. They're pros at content creation. They know content that will engage with an audience. Is your business, we have the Disneys and the other companies that are actually hiring TikTok influencers to become part of their marketing team and create content. But I do believe today to get a lot of visibility in social media with your own content requires that same skill set. And once again, this is for small businesses and entrepreneurs. There are some brilliant entrepreneurs who are brilliant writers that do really well on a platform like LinkedIn, but there's also 99% of people that are like, well, what do I write about? Maybe I'll just drop a link. And I think that approach, and I give the data from my own website, just doesn't work anymore. So platform authentic content is really making content for the platform, and really with this link in bio approach. People may not even look at that link in the comments that you want to put on LinkedIn, but at the end of the day, if they find your content compelling, they will click on your name link and they will go to your profile and hopefully reach out to you. It's the same thing with Instagram. You can't put a link on every piece of content, but you give enough value that they will click that link in your bio. And I thought that was a great analogy to say, hey, if we can make all of our social media so valuable without any links that people will go to our link in bio, that really is a great way of thinking about that concept. And the next chapter is about user generated content, because it's like that's really, really hard to do. And by the way, who said that businesses had to create 100% of their own content for social media anyway? And I really challenged that assumption with a quote. It's a quotable quote. I don't have it on hand right now, but really lean into those in your community, customers, fans, followers. You almost want to incite a steady stream of user generated content. I talk about some strategies there, but for me, like a book, when people talk about a book, it's user generated content. When people review the book, it's user generated content, et cetera, et cetera. And the more of that you have, you understand the concepts like social proof and all these really powerful psychological concepts come to play, but also you're developing a relationship with that content creator. Oh, and by the way, that's less content you need to create as well. So there's a lot of boxes that it checks. And it's something, once again, Amy, we have these concepts that we've been talking about in marketing. I wanted to bring it all together so you see the value that it has. And when brought together, I think you see that it's something that companies are seriously underutilizing. And then from there, if you have a lot of people that are creating content around you, bring them together. Now, I talk about the concept brand ambassador, which not just B2C, but B2B companies have as well, like the Microsoft MVP program, and we can go on and on. But it's really bringing those content creators together into some sort of program where you reward them. You thank them, but you can also offer them, if you have an employee advocacy program, you can bring them together. You can offer them training, right? You can give them access to content, to tools, what have you. And that's really the approach that I think every company should have their fans in social media, but they should have them organized into that sort of a program, and they can activate that program. It's not a campaign-based approach. It is evergreen. It is a daily approach. And I talk about that. I'm a member of the proud member of the Adobe Express Ambassador community, and I give that case study in the book. I got approval from Adobe. It's never really been publicized, and it is just a great case study. But even if you're a small business, I think you can achieve the same. And then I said that SCS, I give each channel equal weight. Well, in the last part, I did give social one more, which is working with external influencers. And this is a term I actually learned from Tim Williams over at Analytica there in London, because they deal only with B2B influencers. They talk about internal influencers like subject matter experts and customers. Well, I guess customers are sort of internal. The external ones are the ones that are the speakers, the people that have no relation, no brand affinity, but that you want to tap into. And really, you want to convert these people into becoming advocates and part of your brand ambassador team. So that's where, I don't spend more than one chapter talking about social media marketing strategy in terms of your own content, your own media is really more about the blog piece. But really, are you prepared if you really want to get the maximum ROI from social media? It's retooling your wiring in your brain, that it's not about the content that you create. It's about the relationships that you create. It's about a word of mouth that you incite. And it really comes down to that user generated content and having people that you can rely on a regular basis in that brand ambassador team.
Yeah, it's so powerful, isn't it? Like that type of content, it's, it potentially, I guess it's quite hard sometimes to get it going and manage it and work with people, but the power, people really do value what others you can say something about what it's like to work with you and your brand and things like that, but nothing's really more powerful than hearing from other people and their views, is
Absolutely.
it? So I mean, we mentioned Jay Bear earlier, but his book Talk Triggers, that was obviously about the power of word of mouth marketing, and that was excellent. But then obviously your book Age of Influence as well on that side. I mean, there's just so much to unpack. I always think that it's funny that I rarely ever would just risk watching something on, say, Netflix or Disney Plus until I've looked at Rotten Tomatoes and all these different sites to just check what other people are saying about it and what is its rating and what do people think. And I'll just immediately not watch something if it's got a really poor rating on one of those sites. I don't even give it a chance. And it's slightly different, but it's kind of looking at what others have to say. I've read your review, like, you guys made the film though, let's see what other people think. And that's often how we think, isn't it? So
this is younger generations do that on TikTok. They find out about a cosmetic brand. It's like, well, what are other people talking about this brand? And I talk about the story of early on when I had an agency and I did a influencer marketing campaign. The marketing manager said, look, we just want to have mentions of our brand throughout the blogosphere. And we have nothing. When people search for our brand, they see nothing except for one page, which is our home page. How do we get other people talking about us in search? So it was a very reaching out to mommy bloggers, what have you. But it really is the same concept. And now it is, with the algorithms being so hard to crack because there's so many good content creators out there, and the emphasis on photo and video, which have always been hard for businesses to really publish and create in an authentic way, in a human way. I think that these concepts are more powerful than ever for companies to follow.
I do completely. And everybody should therefore get a copy of your book because you really do explain these concepts. Awesome. It's looking good. Well, we'll have to, we could talk. I feel like there were so we could do a 10-part series with so many different angles that I'm like, I'd love to go deep on this and this and this, but we have other things to do with our day and then we have to finish, don't we? But it's been absolutely awesome talking to you about this, and I just love your take on all of this. Great book. Everyone should check it out. But thanks for just sharing so much value in this episode. As always, just a pleasure to speak to. Neal, what would you like the next step to be for somebody listening to this? I'm sure I can imagine what you'd like people to do. Go grab a copy of the book.
Yeah, I mean, if you go, I'm Neal Schaffer, NealSchaffer, everywhere on social. My website's nealschaffer.com. I do have a free preview of the book on my website. If you were curious, you could download that. There's literally in the menu, there is a digital threads item now that you can click on
Awesome.
and find that. I did a Kickstarter, and before the Kickstarter, I reached out to people like yourself, Amy, for your opinions and your advice. By the time this episode is published, you'll be able to find it anywhere.
Yeah, it will be.
Anywhere books are sold.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening to this in any of the main apps, and you can just click on the show more notes and you will see links to everything. So go click that link right now before you move on with whatever else you're doing in the day, and go check that out. So yeah, Neal, it's always great to speak. We always have really good conversations, and I'm sure if you're willing, it won't be long before I'll invite you back again onto the podcast to talk more about some of this. But yeah, for now, thank you so much for coming on to the Content 10X podcast.
Well, thank you, Amy.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the Content 10X podcast, then why not hit that subscribe button on your podcast listening app of choice so that you can get updated when new episodes are released. And I'd really, really appreciate it if you could leave a review as well. That really makes a difference for the podcast. Also, please do get a copy of my book, Content 10X, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. It is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content, and it's available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback, and also in audiobook as well. And you can head to content10x.com/book to find all the other places that you can get a copy of my book. And if you would like us to do your content repurposing for you, then we offer a fully end-to-end done for you content repurposing service. This is for podcasters and video content creators. We have our podcast 10x, video 10x, and also our specific LinkedIn 10x service, helping you to become the leading authority in your industry on LinkedIn. You can find out so much more about our services on our website. And also, please do give me a follow on the social media platforms. I share lots and lots of tips and advice on social media about content repurposing. I'm at Content 10x on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you try content10x.com/LinkedIn, you'll find my LinkedIn profile over there as well. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.